In this video, we are going to be talking about the devil. During my awakening, I had a conversation with the devil, Lucifer, that's right, and he gave me a message that was quite profound, but I was not ready to share it until now. My name is Catherine. I'm an energy healer, spiritual coach, and nurse practitioner. If you need personalized coaching or an energy healing from yours truly, then you can go to my website at catherineglassman.com, or you can email me at hello@catherineglassman.com. Now, let me disclaimer and preface this video by saying I am not a devil worshiper. Okay? I am not a Satanist. I am not a witch. I'm not, honestly, all of those are religions, and I really don't believe in religion. I am spiritual, yes, but ultimately, I am a truth seeker. I was an agnostic slash atheist for a very long time in my life. I sought out answers. I wanted to know if God was real. And then I went through a spiritual awakening in 2018. Things started happening. I started seeing things. I started hearing things. I thought I was becoming schizophrenic until I started to have things become validated with my experience. I would share things with people and it would somehow be true. Like there would be things that I would know about other people and their situations and circumstances that I shouldn't know. And for some reason I did. When really the entire time I just thought that there was there was a part of me that felt like I was going crazy. And then over time, I started to realize that I wasn't going crazy. I was actually opening my psychic abilities. Everybody has psychic abilities, everybody has intuition. It is whether or not you choose to believe in it and to grow it. Okay. So that's my story. Because of my experiences, the things that I've seen, heard, experienced, now understanding that God is very real, I do not believe that there is a religion, a single religion out there that can encompass all of the complexities of God and existence. I just don't. And that includes Wiccans, that includes Satanism, but that also includes Christianity and it includes other religions as well. I I think religion at the end of the day is pretty limiting, and it puts you in a box when God is not only inside the box, but is the box itself and very much outside of the box in a shape that you don't even know exists. Okay? So that's me. All right. But through my awakening, there are times where I have been drawn to connect with an energy and like I intentionally connect with them. And then there are times where I get called to connect with them. And during this time, when I channeled this information, this was in 2022. Yeah. And I had already been channeling different energies. I had already connected with Jesus by that point, who I had never, I, I believed that Jesus was a real person, but I never believed in Jesus as like the the spiritual energy. I just believed in him as a person. And so when I connected with Jesus, I had never felt any energy like it before. It was just so incredibly loving that it it's very overwhelming emotionally. And so I had connected with Jesus at this time. And so, for whatever reason, I started to feel called to understand what the devil actually was. And I decided to make this video, by the way, in the spirit of Halloween. I am wearing my annual Halloween shirt. It's kind of silly, but whatever. I I think horror movies can make you just stronger as an individual. Of course, if you get scared of them, that's different. Then you create a darker energy rather than the empowering energy. Anyway, I don't need to get off track like I always do. Sorry. So, I felt like I was being called to understand what the devil was. But I still was a little scared at this point to do that because I was raised, even though I was agnostic and atheist, I was raised as a Catholic. And so, with all of that Catholic programming, I was still scared of the devil, right? I didn't, I just assumed, even going through my awakening, the first time I meditated and heard my name, I immediately thought it was like a demonic entity and stopped meditating for a year. Okay. So that's how much of the Catholic programming was already in my consciousness. Okay. So, around 2022, I started to feel like I wanted to understand the devil. This was around the same time I was watching Netflix and the show Lucifer was on. And I was like, okay, that would be like I felt called to like watch it. And I felt like it was a soft way to kind of inch my way into understanding that energy. So I started watching it, and if you've never seen the show, it's actually pretty good. It's cute, but it is about the devil, Lucifer, and how we all have it wrong about him. And if you watch the show to its entirety, you end up learning that Lucifer is actually a good guy and, so on and so forth, okay? And so I kind of felt like maybe there was some sort of message like similar to that, but I wasn't really sure. But because I was a little scared, I decided to pray and meditate to see if that was something I should explore or if I should leave it alone because there was a bigger part of me that wanted to leave it alone. And the reason why was because I was scared. I was nervous that I was going to invite something into my house that was dangerous and dark, that my house would be haunted, that I would become possessed. Like there were so many things that I was worried about. So I kind of put it off for I want to say like a couple of weeks, but it was just the inkling was still there. So I prayed and meditated. And I asked if this was something that I should actually do. And the answer I got was yes, there is a message that you need to hear. And I said, okay, but the only way I'm going to do this is if I'm heavily protected. So I was speaking to Archangel Michael directly, like, you have to be in the room. You have to protect me. This house has to be protected. I cannot have anything happen to me, to my animals, to the house, to anybody that walks into this house. Nothing bad can happen because if I'm going to do this, this has to be for something that's bigger than me. It can't just be because I'm a little curious. And around this same time, too, I had already been contemplating on making a YouTube channel to share the things that I was experiencing because I felt like my experiences, the things that I channel, ultimately don't belong to me. They belong to the collective. They belong to people who need to hear it. It's there's some information that I channel, that I share, that's going to unlock something for someone. And that's the whole point. It is strictly to serve the mission of evolving human consciousness. And that's it. And so if I'm going to do this, this will be out of service for not only humanity, but also for God. And so I got the green light and I decided to sit down and try to have a conversation with the devil. I will say, do not try this at home, okay? This is not something that I would recommend. When I channel certain energies, like Jesus, for example, I will recommend that you connect with him. There will be certain energies that I will recommend. The devil, I do not. The reason why is because I don't think, and I'm not saying like I'm smarter than other people, and I'm not saying any of that, okay? I am saying that I have had a little bit of experience with this kind of work, and I understand what to look for and what energies feel like that are in alignment with a higher purpose and when they are not. And I also believe in karma. I cannot take on the karma of encouraging people to go talk to the devil when something bad might happen. I can't say something bad or good would happen. But because I can't say that, that's the reason why I'm not recommending it. So don't do this at home. Okay? Just use this video, use other people's experiences and other people's wisdom to gain that knowledge rather than having to do it directly. So the day comes where I decide to finally sit down and talk with the devil. I'm putting white light all over my house, all over the room, my meditation room. I have all four of my main angels, Michael, Azrael, Jeremiel, and Gabriel, in all four corners of the room, watching me, making sure that nothing happens. All right. And I was like, you guys know Lucifer, so you need to make sure you keep him in check. All right. And at the very first sign of something bad or dark, I was going to shut it down, sage the house, and just never even attempt to do anything like that ever again. Okay. So this is the kind of energy that I'm coming with this experience. Okay. So I'm very cautious. Now, I sit down, I do all of the preparation, and I close my eyes. And I slowly start to call him in. And while I'm calling him in, I'm also letting him know that this is a conversation because I feel like he might have some words to share with me that will be good for me to share with others. And that is it. And so, I'm trying to set like boundaries basically during this interaction. And so I'm doing that. And as soon as I'm done, it didn't take very long, but I open my eyes. And what I see is a dark silhouette of a human directly in front of me. And it looks like, okay, if you were to think of a sci-fi movie where somebody has like this cosmic knife and they can cut into this dimension, right? Like cut into reality. And it, like you were to cut it in the shape of a human, but then also with horns, okay? You cut it out and then you punch through this dimension. And on the other side of this dimension or through this punched space is a negative space. Okay, so it almost looks like infinite darkness or like a negative picture, but darker and way in more depth. It's almost, it's a negative space. Okay, so imagine that with red eyes and in the silhouette of like a human with devil horns. Okay, that's what I saw. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it since. It's just a weird, it's not like he is here. It's like he is the opposite of here. It's very hard to explain, okay? So that is how he presented himself to me. Of course, with most interdimensional beings, especially very powerful ones, they can choose the form that they take to interact with you. They can also use already existing people, animals, things to kind of manipulate or encourage them to say certain things or behave in a certain way to interact with you. And that is also how they can reach you, okay? But this is how he presented himself. A negative space, horns, red eyes. Okay, it's just red. They don't blink. And they just stare right into my soul. And I just sit there and look at him. He can feel that I'm a little scared. Like it made me nervous. It was very intimidating. But I also was trying to just push through this fear that was like cultivating inside of me. And I know that he could sense that. And so he sat there and looked at me, um, almost menacingly, but not intentionally. He presented himself this way because he knew that he needed to be terrifying enough, but not terrifying so much that I wouldn't want to interact with him. We sat there in silence for what felt like forever, and he did not speak until I spoke. So finally, I mustered up the courage to ask, "Who are you?" When I knew who it was, but at this time too, when I was interacting with entities and energies, I still was very skeptical because I was like, there's just no way that I'm actually doing this. There's no way, because I'm a skeptic at heart. I, I would claim that I'd never had experiences like this before when I actually have. I just always wrote them off as my imagination or something like that. And so I knew who this was, but I asked the question anyway. Who are you? And he responded with, I am the contrast. And I just sat there a little puzzled because I was waiting for him to say, like, I am the devil, I am Lucifer. But he said, I am the contrast. And he said, I am the polarization. I am everything you have never seen. He said, I take you to the shadowy depths of your consciousness. So when he was saying this, the way he presented himself started to make more sense because he was appearing as a negative space, as if it's a space that you don't see. It's like it's almost the opposite of reality. It's the non-existence. And then of course, I thought of God, if there is an opposite or a polarized version of God, it would be the devil. And if God is everything, then the devil would be the opposite of everything. I don't know if it would be necessarily nothing, but yeah, it just gets so convoluted and nuanced. It's interesting. So then I asked, do you serve God? And he said, yes. And rather than asking the question, because I wanted to consciously ask the question, well, did you get kicked out of heaven? I wanted to ask about the story, the biblical story of him going against God and God kicking him out, and then him recruiting other angels to join him. And I don't know that biblical story fully. That's just kind of what I understand. But instead of asking it, he basically told me that that version is told and it is true to an extent, but it actually was intentional. And this is how he serves God, by becoming intentionally the polarization of God. This made sense because during one of my meditations and downloads, I came to see and experience that God created the universe in order to experience itself. But in order to experience yourself, you have to create something that is opposite of yourself so that you have a frame of reference. Otherwise, it would all just be the same and you would know everything. You would know everything that's going to happen. There would just be no evolution. There would be no experience. And so the devil was created to create that contrast. So then I decided to ask about demons. And please forgive me for my poor questions. During these experiences, I'm still human. Like I'm coming to the conversation with my human consciousness. So my human doesn't have very good or profound questions. If I say anything that's profound on this channel or anything meaningful, it's not me. It's not this. It is that. It's coming from somewhere else. So my questions are not very good. But I asked, why do demons hurt other people? And he said that there are some that become a darker energy through the choices that they make while they are alive or through their consciousness as a soul. Because they have free will, they are able to make the choice to become the darkness. However, there are some energies, there are some demons that are programmed to do this in service of the opposite or in service of the devil. It's almost like angels being in service of God and miraculously saving people's lives or showing miracles. It's like that, except for the opposite, and demons serving the darkness. And he went on to say that if there is a falling in one's life due to demonic forces, it is a reflection of a weak aspect within your own life. That experience is contracted for you to overcome. And it is ultimately to serve your growth. So he went back to the question, do you serve God? And this is how he does it. So really, angels and demons are all, and the devil are all serving God. They're just doing it in different ways. So then I asked, well, what does it mean to sell your soul to the devil? And he gave me this image of a contract sitting in front of me or in front of someone that he presents to you that you must sign in blood, your blood. And he says, I can give you anything you want. And then he showed me a bunch of images of like living this lavish life, being rich and famous and having a bunch of money, having a bunch of cars and a big house and looking beautiful and having a yacht and being very popular with a bunch of people all around you, with celebrities and, all of that. And all of the images look so beautiful and seductive and enticing. And he's like, all of this can be yours. All you have to do is sign here. And the way he showed it to me, it did look very enticing. And I was like, okay, well, if someone were to sign this, then what would happen? And he was like, your soul would be mine. And I was like, well, then what would that look like? And then he showed me images of, if I picked a timeline of being rich and famous, if that's what I wanted in my contract, then he showed me living a life that just didn't belong to me. It was a life that I was experiencing, and I was experiencing the shallower aspects of it, but deep down it was empty and just inauthentic and lonely. And basically, to fulfill my end of the bargain, I would just continue to live this unhappy life that was completely out of alignment. There would be no moments of synchronicities and true connection to all that is. There would be no moments of feeling enlightenment, right? Because enlightenment is not necessarily a state that you can just reach and you're there forever, but rather moments, flashes within your life that you integrate into your human existence. And he showed me just being disconnected from all of that. And not only would that be my own experience within this contract, but I would also have to perpetuate the that kind of energy by encouraging others to join me within this life. And so I would have to get on social media and present myself as if I'm living this happy life and it's beautiful and I'm gorgeous and all of this stuff so that it can further send out energy that is seductive to pull other people into that energy as well. And I would just continue to do this until the contract ended or when I died. And when I die, the contract is over and I get to review that lifetime and the choices that I made and what I would do differently. And I would obviously have to come back and have another opportunity to make different choices. But when he showed me all of this, it just felt so, it felt, I don't even know if sad would be the right word to describe it. I don't even think depressing would be the right word. It was just very empty. It was like I was a shell of a human and that there was just nothing inside. I didn't really feel a lot. Anything that I did feel, it was felt because I was trying to create an experience through what I wanted or what I asked for. So through being rich and using money to have a party and trying to get feelings and connection through the party, when really the ability to feel connected and feel at one with everything, to feel unity consciousness was stripped away from me because I had made the choice to be self-serving. It was really sad. And it actually, seeing that visual, it kind of made me feel more like sympathy for people who have signed their soul to the devil. It seems like what you're signing, you're just going to get everything you want, but in the end, you end up with everything that doesn't matter. He went on to show me that there are some people that will have that kind of experience only, but then there are some people that will, like, different contracts will have different things in them. Some people will have contracts that will allow a demonic energy into their body. So they basically agree to being demonically possessed. And he told me that the majority of celebrities that have signed this contract have signed up for that particular contract because allowing a demonic entity within their body and then using a large platform, they are able to reach more people and perpetuate that energy. So like he was saying before, like that would be part of my contract, would be to try to pull more people into this energy. Well, if you're at such a celebrity status, the most effective way of doing that is by having a demonic entity within the person's body, especially during times of performance. This would explain why some people have experiences of going to concerts or music festivals and feeling like it's a ritual. I've been there myself. There, I think I did I share my story about my Beyonce concert that I went to? I think I have, but I'll have to find it and put a link somewhere. But it's a doozy. It's dark. But one way of knowing if a celebrity or a person has signed that type of contract is if they have an alter ego, because the alter ego is the energy. And with their understanding of the laws of the universe, they have to be honest and tell you what they're doing, because as long as they tell us, then and we continue to consume their content and support them, then we are basically giving them permission to continue doing what they're doing. And it turns out that it doesn't necessarily have to be like a demonic energy, how we would understand it to be. Demonic is a very vague term for dark entity or dark energies, but many of them can actually be reptilian energy. This is why there have been plenty of people to say that they witnessed certain celebrities shapeshift into a reptile. And so I know I have explained this concept before, but I'll just reiterate it in this video, that the goal of the devil, the goal of Luciferian energy, is to pull you away from unity consciousness. Unity consciousness is unconditional love, because God is everything, and therefore being unconditionally loving to everything is honoring God. But the way that you cannot honor God is to be the opposite of unconditionally loving and to be self-serving only. It pulls you away from the whole. And that is the goal of the devil, is to pull you away from the whole, to pull you away from God, which is probably why in that visual of me signing a contract, it felt so lonely and empty. And trying to feel a connection, it just wasn't there because I had signed up to not have that. Now, he did say, and he wasn't really saying these parts, but rather showing me examples that there are other ways that you can be influenced by the devil. You don't necessarily have to formally sign a contract, but there are other ways that the devil can kind of sneak into your life and entice you into coming to the dark side without actually signing a contract. And they will come in forms of small decisions that you make throughout your day, through which will ultimately make up your lifetime. But the more choices you make in the direction of Luciferian energy, the closer you get to basically serving the darkness and perpetuating the Luciferian energy. So for example, one way of doing that would be if your relationship is a little rocky and you haven't had a lot of sexual intimacy with your partner, instead of choosing to speak to your partner or to work on the relationship, you turn to pornography instead. Or instead of trying to treat your depression and understand what's going on with your life, you choose to drink alcohol instead. And so these moments can happen just in a quick moment, and then you can maybe learn the lesson within that experience. If it's just a quick experience, like, okay, I didn't like that experience, I'm going to choose another path. Great, you've overcome that lesson. Or you further perpetuate it and you keep going down that path. And when you keep going down the darker path, there will be other experiences or other circumstances to be presented to you, and which road you choose to go to. If you choose to go to the dark side, then you further strengthen the darkness taking over you. This is another way for demonic possession to also occur. And so you don't even have to formally agree to allow a demonic entity into you. You can make small choices here and there that will eventually lead you to eventually making that choice subconsciously, kind of. But he makes it very clear that there is no demonic energy that is stronger than a human. And there's no way a demonic energy can take over a human without the human giving permission. But there are different ways that you can give permission without formally saying, yeah, I allow you into my body. Instead, you say yes to very similar energies. A really good explanation and example of this concept is in the movie called Nefarious. I had just recently watched this movie, maybe a year ago. It is highly underrated within the horror movie genre. It's it's very good. It's about a psychologist who goes to speak to an inmate who is on death row. And it is claimed that this inmate is possessed. And during their exchange, the inmate or the possessed individual, the demon who is speaking, the demon's name is Nefarious, explains the concept of how somebody can become demonically possessed. And it's very accurate. So as long as you don't get scared of horror movies, as long as you aren't going to find yourself within the Luciferian energy by watching that, then watch it. But the thing with horror movies is that if you feel empowered, if you feel stronger and wiser from watching them, then it is okay to watch them. If you get scared, if you have nightmares, if it's just too much for you to handle, then it probably isn't the best thing to do, okay? But there is a lot of truth within that concept in that movie. And it also explains in that movie too how, because the psychologist was called to that particular demon for a reason. And it shows what a normal person who doesn't even believe in those things, how they are actually intertwined with the darkness without even realizing it. This is why it's important to be at least knowledgeable of these concepts and of these energies because they are at work whether you believe in them or not. So, those were just examples that I have channeled previously, but during this interaction, I asked for an example. And the example he gave me was one he believed is something that a lot of people experience. And it is when you are driving and you're just driving like on a freeway or something, and somebody is driving by you and is getting ready to pass you to get into your lane. He said that you have fallen into the Luciferian energy if you choose to, or even in feel like driving faster to keep that person from passing you and getting into your lane, which I found that to be kind of, I don't want to say hysterical, but it's like, really? That? It's such a simple thing, but he's explaining how these things happen in the most simple choices that we make in our everyday lives. And he explained that in that moment, when you choose to speed up and not let somebody into your lane, you are being 100% self-serving in that moment. And for what? Why can they not get into your lane? Why did you make that choice to do that? Was it now? It's different if you are doing that out of the safety of all of the other cars around you. If there is a good reason to do that. However, in most cases, it doesn't serve anyone except your ego. It just makes you feel more powerful to do that to somebody. Meanwhile, you don't know what's happening with the other car. You don't know why they're doing that. They could just be driving fast and being little race car, reckless drivers, or they could be rushing to a loved one that's in the hospital. You just don't know. And it doesn't matter because in that moment you chose to choose the side of fulfilling your ego rather than having compassion for another human. And so when you make that choice, you immediately set yourself up on a timeline. And that timeline is okay, so if you're willing to do that, what else are you willing to do? So the devil, demons, they take note of that and they see just how far they can get you to fall into the darkness. Meanwhile, it is you who is making these decisions. So he goes back to the contract and he says, I take great offense to when people say, the devil made me do it. And he says, I present the contract, I present the circumstances, I present the opportunities and options. And he's like, but ultimately, it is you who picks up this pen and signs it. He says, the devil didn't make you do anything. You did it. So then I had all these flashes of stories of people being possessed, or the one scenario that I thought of was like Amityville, right? The movie Amityville Horror. He claimed that the devil made him do it. The gentleman that lived in the house and ended up killing his entire family. The family was experiencing like a haunting in the house. They were hearing voices, and the dad was hearing voices. And I believe he went on record and said that the devil made him do it. And then come to find out that the devil didn't make him do anything. And of course, it's it is nuanced, and so I don't know. I've never channeled that particular incident, so I don't know what the circumstances were. But what he tells me is that in some way, shape, or form, you said yes to it. So it starts off with small choices. And if you go into that darker direction, the devil notices and the stakes become higher until eventually something like that results or something else similar. He also went on to say that they create circumstances that make it almost impossible to not choose the self-serving energy. And so he will present really awful people into your life and really bad, terrible experiences to try to break you down so that you inevitably choose to serve yourself only and not the collective. And I'm using movie references, but the movie that popped into my head was The Witch. That is another one that if you get scared easily, probably not the best thing to watch, but it is a different version of the Salem witch trials, and it is about a family that get kicked out of their town and they have to go off into this wooded area, and they have a clearing, but then there's woods that they're not supposed to go in, and people believe in witches and things like that at that time. And there is an eldest daughter that is watching the youngest baby, and the baby goes missing under her watch, and they don't know who took it, but she feels like it was something that was a little supernatural. So throughout the movie, bad things just keep happening. And then eventually there are accusations that she is a witch, and she's not a witch. And she keeps trying to tell people that she's not a witch, and bad things keep happening. They go into the woods and it turns out there is a witch in the woods. And in the end, so if you haven't seen it and you want to watch it, then fast forward, 'cause this is a spoiler alert. In the end, everyone bad things have happened to everyone, and except her directly. It was more like accusations for her and just not feeling loved or wanted, but she is the last one standing, kind of. And the family started to suspect that the devil was living in one of the animals. And so it's just her. So she goes up to the animal and she says, "Will you speak to me?" And she says it a couple of times. And right before she gets up to leave, the animal or the devil says, "What does thou want?" And he says, she's like, "Well, what can you give me?" And she says, or he says, "I can give you a pretty dress. I can give you this and that." And he's like, "All you have to do is sign here." And she says, "I can't write my name." And so he's like, "I'll guide your hand." And she gives him permission, and she ends up going into the woods and basically becoming the very thing that started all of the horrific things to begin with. Okay. What I love about this movie is that the circumstances are very terrible, and they're indirect to her. They're all being caused by a witch who serves the devil. So it's not necessarily the devil doing all these things, but it's a witch who agreed to sell her soul to the devil, right? That is who's causing all of this chaos. But in the end, because it's her life was just so terrible and just, she didn't deserve any of this. In the end, she chose to go speak to the animal that they suspected was the devil. And she said, "Will you talk to me?" This is a very important part of the movie because the devil didn't come up to her and say, "Hey, what do you want? I can give you whatever you want." No, she went up to him. And what is the very first thing that comes out of his mouth? "What do you want?" And that is one of the most said things by Lucifer in the show is, "What do you desire?" Just those small details that are very important that a lot of people overlook. So then my next question was, "Why do you do this?" And he says, "As a creation of Source, you are given the opportunity to experience all of existence. The knowledge and wisdom that is gained over time is the consequences of stepping into the unknown. This is accomplished through contrast, which is what I am." And of course, he's saying something fairly profound, and my human is like, "Why are you so dark and scary?" And he responded with, "What is a world without fear? A weak one? How do you understand bravery without it?" Obviously, he's emphasizing the empowerment of facing fear. So then I asked, "Do you love humans?" And he said, "Yes, I do. Enough to step into the role of being hated and feared by everyone, while also being the greatest source of growth for everyone. That is how much I love you." So then I asked, "Okay, well, what about satanic worshipers?" And he said, "There are ways of manipulating reality in your favor through various ways. One way is by asking for assistance. When you go to church and you pray to God, you are asking for a certain outcome. When satanic worshipers go to their deity, they are asking for a certain outcome." So then I asked, "Is there a higher purpose to all of this?" And he said, "Yes. Through these experiences, you will come closer to understanding who you truly are and to what you truly desire." And then he just showed me a visual of me getting two choices, and it's a dark and there's a light. And I'm standing there and I'm looking back and forth between the two. And it's unclear of which way I go. And of course, in the visual, I choose. He gives me the visual, but then in the visual, I choose to go to the light. And then it just kind of fades into like bright light. It's a very nice visual to end that with. And after that visual, he says, the darkest hour of night is right before the dawn. And that was the end of our conversation. Pretty heavy and profound for a conversation with the devil. And it definitely makes you rethink that entire concept. And it makes me wonder, maybe the enemy isn't the devil. Maybe the enemy is ourselves. So, of course, I'm sitting there. He's gone now. I feel fine. I don't feel sad or depressed or dark. I have had darker energies try to attach themselves to me, and I have felt depressed and anxious or angry. And like I can feel when I have attachments, but after that interaction, I did not feel any of those. If anything, I was just left with this profound message of why darkness exists, and that whole concept of the devil, none of that was an accident. And it makes sense to me because I don't think God makes mistakes. So I've always had a hard time accepting the narrative that the devil was kicked out and now causes chaos among humans. This actually makes more sense to me, that this was divinely orchestrated for our benefit. So I'm sitting there, I'm unpacking this, and I'm like, whoa, that was wild. And then, of course, my insecure ego gets the best of me. And I was like, did that really happen? Did I actually talk to the devil? Like, I don't know. And I'm sitting on the floor at this time when I'm doing this, right? So I went to get up, and there was a dresser behind me, and I hit the dresser. And when I did, something fell behind the dresser. And so I look behind the dresser, and it's my angel figurine. Okay, it was this one. And it's dainty, and it has fallen before, and it's been fine. But this time, after talking to the devil and wondering if that actually happened, this fell behind the dresser, and I don't know if you can see it, but there is a crack between the wings because the wing broke off. Obviously symbolic for a fallen angel losing its wings. So, can't really deny that. And yeah, so I journaled that entire experience and I shared it with close friends and family. But this is the first time I've ever publicly shared that experience. So there you go. And so then after the angel fell, I was like, okay, that clearly was a real experience. And so that was that. The next day, I'm watching YouTube or something like that, and on my feed is an ex-Satanist who was like the head of a satanic church in South Africa or something like that. You may have seen this gentleman. I don't know his name. He's a Caucasian man, a little bigger I don't know if he has a beard, but at the time he had like piercings and tattoos, things like that. And I don't mean to be rude or cliche, but he kind of like took on the appearance of what a classic, Satanist would look like. Not to be rude, but I'm just trying to paint a picture, I guess. And it it's an interview of him sharing the experience of how he was he ran this church of, Satanists, or the Church of Satan, and he was at some sort of event talking about his religion, and a woman came up to him and said something along the lines of, Jesus loves you, or something like that. And she gave him a hug. And in this hug, he said it felt so powerful and it felt so loving and genuine that it was something he had never forgotten. And it moved him. But, it was a hug and that was that. And one day he decides to do a ritual, and I don't know what possessed him to do this. No pun intended, but I don't know what possessed him to do this, but he decided to ask for Jesus. And he does it in a demanding way. Like, Jesus, if you're real, then you need to present yourself to me. Either that or Jesus showed up and he was skeptical. Maybe that's what it was. And he said, if you're really Jesus, then you need to prove it to me. And he said in that moment, Jesus flooded his heart with so much love. And that feeling that he had felt the same way that that hug did when the woman said that Jesus loves you. And it's so moving when you hear him talk about it, because he starts to cry. And he said it was the most amazing feeling, the amount of love that he has ever felt in his life. And I can always tell when people have had a real experience with Jesus, because it always makes them cry. Like, that's how you know you actually connected with Jesus, because it's so beautiful and profound that it rocks you to the core of your soul. And after that experience, he left the Church of Satan and became a Christian. And now he talks about how he converted to Christianity from that experience. And now he teaches people about, Jesus's love, and how the kingdom of God is like, what does he say? The gates to the kingdom of heaven are open for everyone, I think is what he said. And it was just so beautiful. So after I watched that and I was moved by it, I immediately got a flash back to what Lucifer said during my conversation with him, when he said, the darkest hour of night comes right before the dawn. And that's when I understood what his purpose was. His purpose is to bring you the darkness, so that when the light steps in, you will recognize it and you will be called home. And in that moment, I understood that Lucifer and Jesus actually work in tandem to bring you back home. Like, so cool to just watch all of that come full circle, which is why so many people are having experiences with Jesus now. And that's all it takes, because it's such a visceral experience that you cannot deny Jesus and Jesus' love, and embodying Jesus' unconditional, loving way of being. That's so good. So as I was preparing for this video, I came across a quote actually by the psychologist Carl Jung. And the quote is, modern man can't see God because they do not look low enough. As in, they do not look in the shadow. They do not have the darkness to be able to see God. And then I heard Lucifer say, don't worry, that's what I'm here for. I hope you liked the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Consider subscribing, and I will see you next time. Happy Halloween!